Good morning. I'm Reverend Daniel Gregoire, and today is February 7th, 2021. Thank you for joining us today. This church is dedicated to the wisdom that, very excited. Start again. Good morning. That sounds better. My name is Reverend Daniel Gregoire. Today is February 7th, 2021, and thank you for joining us today. This church is dedicated to the wisdom that beneath all of our differences and behind all of our diversity, there is an essential unity that binds us forever together, despite time and despite the space and the dimensions that seem to separate us. We are held by this one essential unity. And so we commit ourselves to the work of building and sustaining our unity and our deeper connections, even now, as we both physically distance ourselves and meet as a virtual faith community. And so we pause in silent witness to that special commitment. Please enjoy our prelude music this morning. I'm going to Lift My Sister Up by Thea Rose Touré, performed by the UUSGU Choir.
I'm gonna Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Grafton and Upton. I am Kate Gregoire, and I'm the worship associate for today. Thank you. Our mission as a church is to spark the spirit and the mind, to kindle loving community, and ignite social justice in the world. Here at UUSGU, we strive to be a community that affirms, promotes, and celebrates all people, including those of different religious backgrounds, political perspectives, age, education, socioeconomic status, marital status, family structure, affectional and sexual orientation, gender and its expression, racial and cultural identity, ethnicity, national origin, and mental and physical health and ability. Whoever you are, welcome. We are glad that you are part of our community. Please consult your digital order of service for more information. And if you are joining us live on Facebook, please take this opportunity to share this broadcast with your friends in real time. You can click the share button on your screen or start a watch party. Anything is made better by sharing it. So thank you. It sounds like we have a few folks joining us for the first time. And in our chat, you'll see a link for a visitor form. This is our mango card. This is what you would fill out if you were here in the sanctuary with us today. We've got a digital for you in the chat. So please do take a minute to fill it out. Just let us know who you are so Reverend Daniel can reach out and welcome you. Okay. Our spiritual theme of the month is spirit, which we can feel as the essential quality of community and the perceived power of places. Let's consider this quote on our theme by James Weldon Johnson, a defining voice of the Harlem Renaissance. It's titled, "Deep in the Quiet Wood." Are you bowed down in heart? But hear the clashing discords and the din of life? Then come away. Come to the peaceful wood. Here, bathe your soul in silence. Listen. Now, from out the palpitating solitude, do you not catch yet faint, elusive strains? They are above, around, within you, everywhere. Silently listen. Clear and still more clear they come. They bubble up in rippling notes and swell in singing tones. Now let your soul run the whole gamut of the wondrous scale until responsive to the tonic chord, it touches the diapason of God's grand cathedral organ, filling earth for you with heavenly peace and holy harmonies. In lighting the flaming chalice, we join in a tradition that unites Unitarian Universalists throughout the country and around the globe. Together, we tend the flame to acknowledge and to celebrate the light of the holy and the brilliance at the core of every person. Together, we shine a light on the path to deeper understanding and compassion, a beacon of hope for all to follow. Let's say these words together. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. each week, would, okay. Each week, when we come together, we set aside time to hear from each other, to strengthen the bonds of beloved community, to grow our spirits, which is what we're here to do. This is the time to share the profound transitions, transformations, trials, and insights that add depth and meaning to our living. Please share your joys and sorrows using the comment section of our Facebook Live broadcast. Reverend Daniel will read these out as they come in. We want you to take part in this interactive worship experience, so please do take a moment to share.
Let's start our time for sharing with turning our thoughts and turning our hearts towards the people of Burma, Myanmar, and the political strife that is taking place in that Southeast Asian nation right now. Let's pray for peace and for stability there and here. Let's also acknowledge our leaders, our political leaders. May they be guided by compassion as well as a sense of justice. Thank you for taking the time to share your joys and sorrows with me. As they come in, I will read them. We have from Norm rather, thankful for long walks. Thank you for sharing that. From Ted, my friend Peter DeJong of Mendon died from cancer last Wednesday. Our thoughts and prayer go out to Peter's family and to you, Ted. Thank you for sharing that. Cindy writes, no sunshine today, but the promise of a beautiful snowfall this afternoon. Thank you for that, Cindy. Checker's thankful for the possibilities of healing my relationship with my sister and the beautiful birds that grace our planet. Caroline writes, I'm encouraged and thankful I was well enough to go for a short nature hike yesterday with my family in the late day, low light. Veronica writes, my nephew Thomas passed last week with heart issues. We hold your nephew Thomas in the light, Veronica. Michael writes, joyful that my mom has her second vaccine shot, praying for my friend Eve, who is in the hospital with a sudden nerve disorder, happy that several friends and colleagues are recovering from COVID. Good news indeed. Thank you for sharing that.
Daniel, can you share nephews?
Sure. Russell writes, I'm grateful for snow. You are not alone in that. Deb writes, spent a glorious day at the ocean and wandering marsh-side trails. Thank you for that, Debbie. MB writes, grateful for days I see Reverend Daniel outside the church when I am on my walk with little Zoe, small town life. Thank you for that, MB. That's one of my joys, too. Kate, you had a joy?
I do. My younger sister was blessed with twins, and everybody is home safe now, and thriving and enjoying cuddles with grandma. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Me too. Beth writes, grateful for seemingly bad things that end up having a wonderful silver lining. Thankful for my childhood best friend still being in my life, despite our vastly different belief systems. Grateful for home and family. Russell writes, Julie, grateful for outpour of support, doing well, and looking forward to walking again. Glad to know that, Julie. Yay for Kate's sister, indeed. From MB. Why don't we bring our time of sharing to a close? In hearing these joys and sorrows, we are reminded how blessed and how humbled it is we are in the face of the glories and the mysteries of this gift that we call life. Let us hear these words from Lewis Latimer, 19th century African-American inventor and collaborator with Thomas Edison in developing the light bulb. He's actually in our sanctuary today. I wonder if you can spot him later. These are his words. Love is all. What is there in this world besides our loves to keep us here? Ambition's course is paved with hopes deferred, with doubt and fear. Wealth brings no joy, and brazen-throated fame leaves us at last, naught but an empty name. O soul, receive the truth. Ere heaven sends thy recall, naught here deserves our thought but love, for love is all. Let us enter this time of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and of love, great mystery that some call God, help us to be present in this moment of brave encounter. Bind us together in spirit and in sentiment. Connect us more deeply to something greater than what we alone could ever imagine. Guide us towards greater understanding and greater sympathy with all people. Open our souls to receive the great and timeless truth that love indeed is all. In our thoughts, in our deeds, in our hopes, and in our dreams, may we be open to that truth. And in so doing, may we be welcomed into your abiding presence in every moment of our living. We pray for the healing and for the restoration of all life into wholeness, the healing and the restoration of all life into oneness. May these things and so many more be so. Amen, and blessed be. Our hymn this morning is one that we love here in this congregation, and we don't hear often enough. Spirit of Life. You'll hear those words sung in Spanish and in English. I hope that you will join us in singing at home.
Corazón, cantaré tu compañía.
Fond memories there. Our reading this morning comes from the words and the writings of Howard Thurman and is an excerpt from his essay, The Creative Encounter. The central fact in religious experience is the awareness of meeting God. The encounter, sometimes a confrontation, and sometimes a sense of presence. What is insisted upon, however, without regard to the term used, is that in the experience defined as religious, the individual is seen as being exposed to direct knowledge of ultimate meaning, ne plus ultra being, in which all that the individual is becomes clear as immediate and often distinct revelation. The mind apprehends the whole. The experience is beyond or inclusive of the discursive. It is not other than discursive, but somehow it is inclusive of the discursive. Here ends our reading.
Good morning. First, I'd like to invite all the young and the young at heart to come forward and get comfortable at home for a time for all ages. So this morning we're talking about the words we use to name our experience of the holy, which is a little bit like the question of what is the true name of God? And the UU religious educator, Mary Ann Moore, wrote a wonderful story about just this. It begins, once upon a time, when there was a boy and a girl. They would always argue about everything. One day, they started to argue about what is the real name of God? And the boy said, I know that the real name of God is Father in heaven. And the girl said, oh no, I know. The real name of God is Mother of us all. And they argued back and forth till finally they realized that they were going to need to go and actually find God to ask and figure this out once and for all to settle this dispute. And so off they went on a journey. And on their way, they encountered some people who were coming home from the market with food. And they said, oh, hello, could you please help us? We're trying to find the way to God because we need to ask God God's true name. And the people said, well, you're going to need to keep going all the way to the end of the road. But there's no need for you to go because we know the true name of God is Giver of Life. The boy and the girl said, okay, well, thank you, but I think we're going to go ask just the same. And so the people gave them some fruit to take with them on their journey. And off they went until they came to a river. And on the river, there was some people in a boat fishing. And they said, "Oh, excuse us, we need to find the way to God, to ask God, God's true name. Can you please help us?" And the people in the boat said, "Oh, sure. Well, you're going to have to cross the river. But you don't need to do that because the true name of God is the hidden one." And they said, "Oh, well, thank you, but we'd still like to ask." So the people in the boat said, "Okay, well, we'll hop in, and we'll give you a ride across the river." And so off they went. And when they got to the other side, they thanked them and went on their way. Then they were walking, and they came to the edge of a forest, and they found some people there, and they said, "Excuse us, we need to find the way to God, to ask God, God's true name. Can you please help us?" And the people said, "Well, you just have to go a little bit deeper into the forest. But you don't need to ask, because God's true name is the protector." And they said, "Well, thank you very much, but we're going to ask just the same." And so the people gave them some blankets to keep them safe and warm. Well, they went into the forest, and it was starting to get dark, and so they actually got out their blankets, and they had their fruit, and they went to sleep under a tree. In the morning, just as the sun was coming up, they heard a voice. And the voice said, "Hello, I am God. I hear there are some children here wondering, what is my true name? Please, what do you think it is?" And the girl said, "Well, I know that your true name is Mother of us all." And God said, "Yes, it is so." And she jumped up and down. She was so excited. And then the boy, he was a little disappointed. He said, "Well, hold on. I thought your true name was Father in heaven." And God said, "Yes, it is so." And he said, "Aha, I told you so, told you so." And then they thought for a second, well, we can't both be right. What is your really true name? And God said, "People call me many names, but that any name that is spoken with a loving heart, that is my true name." And at this, they finally understood, and they thanked God, and they went home, and they never argued again about the true name of God, but they did argue about who was the bravest on the way home. The end. And so I just want to leave you with this one simple question, which is, when you reach out and when you use your words to name the holy that you experience, what words do you use? See you soon.
Thank you for that very beautiful story, Chris. So in Judaism, there are 7 names for God. In Islam, there are 99 names for the divine, called the 99 beautiful names for Allah. In Hinduism, there are 33 million names and associated forms of God or Brahman, the universal principle or ultimate reality, just being two of those 33 million names. Our spiritual theme this month, Spirit, invites us to name our names for the holy. We are invited to hear and to appreciate also what others call the holy, the ultimate, the divine. And we are encouraged to really feel the essential quality of community and the perceived powers of place that some call God. Today, I also hope that we can celebrate the bonds of friendship and understanding that can exist between communities, our rare community of faith. And I say that our community of faith is rare because we are home to humanists and to naturalists, to pantheists, to theists and atheists, and a great many agnostics. And the faith communities that I'm describing us becoming friends with are faith communities that perhaps more explicitly adhere to a more theistic, that is to say, God-based frame of reference. How do we have dialogues across communities? And that brings up a question for me, and perhaps a question that you have too. Can Unitarian Universalists, for example, be friends with evangelical Christians? Can Unitarian Universalists be friends with African American Baptists? Can we? This being Black History Month, I hope that we can explore this idea of friendship across difference in more detail. But the answer to both of those questions is, of course, yes. Absolutely. Mutual respect and appreciation for shared values and a commitment to work for the common good are what it takes to make such friendships, and cross-cultural friendships in particular, possible. Mutual respect and appreciation for shared values and a commitment to work for the common good. Now, our theme of spirit is also a challenge to us as Unitarian Universalists. A challenge for us to get out of our heads, to get out of our comfort zones of the hyper-rational, and to get all the way in to our feelings. To feel something is to do an act that goes beyond facts and figures. It's to reach beyond the reasonable, beyond deduction. Feelings call upon faculties of the body and of the soul that too many of us regard these faculties with a bit of suspicion, perhaps a large bit of suspicion. We are suspicious of those feelings. We are suspicious of those feelings in ourselves and in others. We are cautious as a religious movement among those whose expression of enthusiasm is more ecstatic. We're uncomfortable around the zealots. We are uncomfortable around those who wear their feelings too close to the surface of their being. Why are we uncomfortable? Why am I uncomfortable with those feelings? Perhaps I'm worried that those feelings might infect me, that they might awake something in me that might take me over. We wonder if we can actually trust our feelings. Can we trust our sense of intuition? Can we trust our sense of wonder? Can we trust that way of knowing in our bodies that is so often at odds with the logic that we are told that we must embrace in our day-to-day living? We, many of us, even suppose that we can continue the medieval conceit that we can apply logic to every aspect of our lives, We can apply logic and order and reason even to our religious lives. But when we do that, what actually happens is that we imagine that we are free thinkers, but in fact we are masquerading as free thinkers, holding on very rigidly to dogmas that are actually unfeelingness, these dogmas that we hold on to. We imagine that we're free thinkers, but no, we're holding on to something that is rigid, that is cold, that is not exactly life-sustaining. We're holding on to a sense of unfeelingness. I often get trapped and tripped up by this sense of logic, this idea that there must be, in all things and in all times and all places, a kind of structure, a kind of coherence, a theory of everything, as it were, a red thread, at the very least, that I could follow through all things. And if I can but find that red thread, it will somehow allow me a sense of understanding, but perhaps more importantly to me, a sense of control. Too many of us are possessed, as it were, by this intense will to predict and to control. It extends to so many areas of our lives. We want to control our health. We want to control our families. We want to control the lives of our children, well into their adulthood in some cases. We want to control our neighbors and our friends. We want to control our system of government. And our democracy often suggests that we can control our government, but that's not always true. We want to control our economic systems, and we want to will, if it's within our power to make this thing true, we want to will the continuance of a high-performing stock market through the magic of our overthinking about it. We allow ourselves to believe that if we can just gather enough information, if we can take all of the correct action, if we can control the course, if we can do those things, we can control the course and the outcomes in every arena of our lives and ultimately outwit the complex probabilities engine that is life. An example of this is how so many of us fretted over the recent election. The recent election, we wondered out loud, we wondered to each other, would it be 4 more years of what we knew before, or would a necessary regime change come to Washington? What could we do to reduce the chance of the former and increase the likelihood of the latter? We wondered day after day after day. More reading, more talking, more writing, more protesting, more convincing, more what? So many of us could never be persuaded that we were doing enough. But what remained a great mystery in all of this is what was the next thing that we really could do to change the outcome. One of my colleagues related to me how they were filled with worry and anxiety and fear about the outcome of the election. This person, like so many UUs, was white, educated, comfortably middle class, living in the furthest reaches of suburbia in what one might call this is the words of John of Gaunt in Shakespeare's Richard II. This person lived in a sceptered isle, a blessed plot of earth, a fortress built by nature for herself against infection and the hand of war. Suffice it to say, someone with a very special life. My colleague and my friend, a longtime activist, was confessing their confusion about an African-American pastor that they knew, a fellow activist in an urban setting. That pastor seemed to my friend unbothered, not worried about the election outcome, one way or another, come what may. well, how could this be? How could it be when clearly he is a black man and his community, so long disenfranchised, would have so much to lose or to gain, depending on the outcome of things? How could he be so well moored, well anchored, when all those around him, especially those in far more comfortable positions than he, were so adrift in the moment? My colleague said, how could he simply leave it up to God? Those were his words. I'm leaving it up to God. How was he able to leave it up to God and to get on with his life? When my colleague related that experience to me, I recognized something that excited me. Here was a chance to offer a different perspective on things, and one that would be very crucial for my colleague and crucial for our congregation in particular as we begin to really flesh out our social justice agenda, especially as we begin to unfurl the banner of racial allyship and racial amity, that is to say, friendship. In order to strengthen our cross-cultural friendships, perhaps even extending the hand of friendship to a historically black congregation becoming sister churches, which is a dream that we've shared with each other and we are taking steps to do. If we hope to do this well, we must appreciate the unique frame of reference expressed by that unnamed black pastor and activist. What my UU friend and colleague struggle to understand, what some in our congregation might struggle to understand, is that feeling of presence, that companioning presence that attends all religious experience, that presence that some choose to call God. Without knowing this pastor personally, I know that he was naming that creative and ultimately liberating encounter with the divine in the black idiom. And in so doing, he was allowing room for all sorts of unimagined possibilities to emerge and take shape and become real. When we let go of that ultimately illusory sense of control, we can take on, all of us, a far grander point of view, a far grander point of reference, where so much more is possible. In our reading today, we heard the words of 20th century theologian and Quaker mystic thinker, who also happens to be African American, Howard Thurman. He was the first black dean and chaplain of the historically white institution, Boston University. He was also one of the founders of the first intentionally interfaith and interracial churches in the United States, in San Francisco, in 1944. This church, the Fellowship for All People, which still meets 75 years on, has this as its vision. We are an interfaith, interracial, and intercultural community of seekers dedicated to personal empowerment and social transformation through an ever-deepening relationship with the Spirit of God in all life. It's pretty extraordinary. It sounds awfully familiar, too. Howard Thurman wrote that the central fact in religious experience is the awareness of meeting God. The encounter, sometimes the confrontation, sometimes the sense of presence. What is insisted upon, without regards to terminology, is that the experience defined as religious, the individual is exposed to direct knowledge of ultimate meaning, ne plus ultra being, in which all that the individual is becomes clear as immediate and often as distinct revelation. in the reading, what's really compelling about it is how Thurman captures the essence of feeling coming from an encounter with God, which is imagined in the most electrifying terms. It is being exposed to direct knowledge, ultimate meaning. In his words, this exposure is immediate, is direct, it's revelatory. Ne plus ultra is an ancient Latin phrase that refers to a quality of surpassing perfection. There is nothing more to be attained because you've attained it all in this encounter. This experience can be described in words, but one needs so many of them. And in the end, the concepts transcend the words. It transcends phrases, thoughts. It transcends logic, but it is deeply felt all the same. Thurman writes, the mind apprehends the whole. The experience is beyond or inclusive of the discursive. It is not other than discursive, but somehow it is inclusive of the discursive. And that's a lot of prose. I really appreciate the word discursive, though, because it describes a style of writing that is fluid and expansive. Often it is used in a pejorative, that is to say, a negative sense, and it can reveal a bit of contempt in the kind of speech-making that has lots of digressions and it's bouncing back from subject to subject with little sense of coherence. But that's just it, to talk about the divine. It's a hard thing to do. There's very little coherence in all of it, and that's as it should be. We will always fall short and sound silly when talking about the holy. It will land on the ear like a housefly trying to escape through the window, trying to get our attention. Buzz. When the people in our lives say that I'm letting go and letting God, when they say, God willing, when we hear the words, it's in God's hands now, when we perhaps say to ourselves, only God knows, this is not an abnegation. It is not a rejection of real responsibility. It is not a leaving behind a sense of personal agency. It's not defeatism. It's not resignation. It's not giving up. What it actually is a really courageous acknowledgement of the mystery and complexity of every single aspect of our lives. This turn of phrase is a recognition of our humanity, and these phrases lend dignity and liberation to that humanity, and we deserve those things. The feelings that come from the life-sustaining belief systems that allow for those kinds of expressions allow all of us to live more present in the moment and to face life's many uncertainties with dignity and with grace. For the pastor activist to say that the election and all else is in God's hands is an instance of life-sustaining faith and feeling. That energy, that power, that calm doesn't come from ambition. It doesn't come from fame. It doesn't come from wealth or comfort. It comes from the creative and liberating encounter with God. But where is God in Unitarian Universalism? Where is God in our 7 UU principles? There is indeed not any mention of God or deity in our 7 principles. But therein lies the beauty of our living tradition and the extraordinary elegance of our principles, in that they do not pretend to describe what is ultimately beyond discursive. 7 words, 99 words, 33 million words would not be enough to describe the holy. And it's always silly when we try. But what our 7 principles do together is that they point us down the road that we must take to encounter the holy. Our 7 principles are a guide. They are a way of placing ourselves on the path of what Thurman describes as the direct knowledge of ultimate meaning, the ne plus ultra being, the encounter that allows for clarity, that is immediate, that allows for revelation. The principles are the means through which we encounter a God of our own understanding. Our 3rd principle, in particular, the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, might be the one principle that we could focus our attentions on as a means of connecting with others and connecting with the divine. Again, that 3rd principle is the acceptance of one another and encouragement towards spiritual growth in our congregations and, by extension, in ourselves. Remember that our community is a place where we gather to grow spiritually, to expand our knowledge, and ultimately to expand our feelings so that we can better embrace each other and better embrace the holy. I want us to hear those turns of phrase with new ears. I'm letting go and letting God. It's in God's hands now. I want us to hear those turns of phrase, not with pity, not with contempt, not with silent ridicule, but rather as markers of courageous spiritual growth and a commitment to ongoing liberation and human dignity. Our spiritual growth lies in the true appreciation of difference, including different points of view and different points of reference, and celebrating the diversity of ways and the diversity of names that we apply to the holy. Celebrating the diversity of ways that we encounter God. We can do this. We can do this. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who has brought us up far on the way, Thou who has by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever on the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the place, our God, where we met Thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. These are the words of James Weldon Johnson in Lift Every Voice and Sing. Let us all celebrate the many names and many ways of encountering the holy. May it be so, and amen.
Let's take a moment to sit and reflect on our experience with these words. What do they mean to you? Please hold these in sacred silence. Following today's service in the Zoom Fellowship Hour, we will gather to share our reflections on today's service together in our beloved community. So please join us. We create this community through our donations of time, of talent, and financial support. These donations make possible not only this gathering here this morning, but also the other works of this congregation. Please consult your digital order of service and look for the yellow donate button. Click on that button and be as generous as you can be at this time. You can also find us on Venmo, and you can make donations by visiting our website, UUSGU.org. Please continue to mail your contributions as well. All of this information can be found on your digital order of service. If you have questions about how to get connected or how to stay connected to all that is happening at this dynamic church, simply email Vanita at vanita@uusgu.org. Don't forget, we're gathering to share our reflections on today's service and to say hello following the service for our fellowship time. Our fellowship host is Christine Johnson, so please do join us. And coming up this week, we've got 2 events today and 2 on Tuesday. Today at 2 p.m., the youth group is meeting with Danae Allison. And later at 5, from 5 to 6, there's a religious education opportunity with DRE Chris Scheller. It's an anti-racism workshop. So from 5 to 6, they're meeting on Zoom, I believe. And yes, at UUSGU.org. There's a coffee gathering hosted by Allison Snyder, 9 a.m. on Zoom. Put it in your calendars. You can contact Allison for more information, and her email is in the order of service. And then we have tea with the minister and me on Tuesday at 4 p.m. I'm so excited. We're going to be reading County Cullen, another voice of the Harlem Renaissance in honor of Black History Month and of our spiritual theme, Spirit. So please do join us. We'll be on Facebook Live. We love your comments, so please do let us know how you're experiencing the poetry and the conversation. All right, thank you and have a good week.
Thank you, Bob, for that. That was the Heliotrope Bouquet by Scott Joplin. In this beloved community, now gathered online, we are building those capacities to connect more deeply with our feelings, those feelings of open and expansiveness, those feelings of connections with sources of power beyond ourselves. It's hard to describe these things. They are beyond discursive, but also include the discursive, the things that we can talk about. The names that we apply for the holy are important. The names that others apply to the holy are important. So whether we have one name or 7 names, 99 names, or 33 million names for the holy, what matters is that we acknowledge and celebrate whatever it is we call that great mystery that some call God. Here in this community, we know that we are guided by principles that call us again and again to remember the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the acceptance of one another, and encouragement toward spiritual growth, the ongoing search for truth and meaning, and that sense of radical connectedness and interdependence that exists among all life. If you are in sympathy with those principles that guide us in our faith and that sustain the life of this community, I want you to know that you belong here. You found your community of seekers. We are on this path together, that you are seen, that you are loved, and that I love you. And with that, we're going to extinguish the light of this chalice, because that light is ours to carry out into the world. In our going, let us remember this, that whatever it is we dream we can do or believe we can do, we can begin it this day. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So let us be bold in our living and in our loving, bold in our giving and in our forgiving, so that the world awaited becomes more nearly the world attained. Go in peace and be a blessing.